there is no escape. Against this fascinating background is woven the story of an imperishable love and the enthralling saga of 6 desperate people, each in Casablanca to keep an appointment with destiny.
I was willing to shoot Captain Reno, and I'm willing to shoot you. All right, Major, you asked for it.
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay. Only 3 reasons why Casablanca is considered to be one of the greatest motion pictures ever made. But at the time of its release, it was just another movie from a Hollywood dream factory.
You know already who the murderer is.
Good. Is he in custody?
Oh, there's no hurry. Tonight he'll be at Rick's. Everybody comes to Rick's.
I've already heard about this cafe and also about Mr. Rick himself.
By now, we have all heard of Rick's Cafe. But just what has kept us coming back for 50 years? Is it the spirit of wartime patriotism? The intrigue and danger of the mysterious desert locale? Or is it the desperation of star-crossed lovers trapped in Casablanca?
What were you before? What did you do and what did you think, huh?
We said no questions.
Here's looking at you, kid.
Perhaps it's just the themes of lost love and redemption that people respond to. It's a strange mix within that movie of personalities and story and music that seem to come together unexpectedly.
Casablanca has a great story, marvelous characters, interesting melodrama. The thing moves like gangbusters. The backdrop still works, even though it's dated, but it goes beyond that. It transcends the period.
It seems incredible now, but every major studio made a picture a week, 50 pictures a year. When we were shooting Casablanca, it was just one of the 50.
Hollywood, 1942. The studio system was at its peak. Samuel Goldwyn, David O. Selznick, Louis B. Mayer. These were the titans behind Hollywood's golden era and the greatest movies ever made. Over at Warner Brothers, studio chief Jack Warner certainly earned his place among these legendary movie moguls. And as his right-hand man, executive in charge of production, Hal B. Wallace.
Jack Warner made a lot of the financial decisions, of course, but Hal Wallace was the one that was running the studio. Wallace okayed every script, every makeup, every dress, every suit. In those days, the major studios were run like that.
It was basically Hal Wallace's determination and his instinct for this thing that really made Casablanca the classic that it is.
Casablanca was just another place on the map until Wallace got his hands on a play entitled Everybody Comes to Rick's.
I used to be sent to New York once a year to look at new plays and try to find new material. And I saw this Everybody Comes to Rick's play, unproduced play. It had been written by Murray Burnett and Joan Allison, but it never got produced.
Based upon the travels of playwright Murray Burnett, Everybody Comes to Rick's was a story born directly out of the fear and chaos of a people without hope.
I was upset. I had no idea I was going to write a play, an anti-Nazi play, or a political play. I was ill. I literally got ill. On that same European trip, when I was in the south of France, my friends from Antwerp, from Belgium, said, hey, let's go out tonight to a nightclub, to Cap Ferrat. And we went to Cap Ferrat, to a nightclub. There was a black man at the piano. And I said to my first wife, gee, what a setting for a play.
I took it back to the coast with me, and I gave it to my boss, who was Hal Wallace, and we decided to make it.
Jack Warner paid more for Everybody Comes to Rick's than had ever been paid for an unproduced play. And true to Hollywood form, a name change was imminent.
There had been a very successful picture just a few years before this called Algiers, with Hedy Lamarr, Charles Boyer, the Casbah, and it conjures up all kinds of romantic, exotic locales, you know. So it occurred to Hal Wallis and others that perhaps the title would be much more potent if they called it Casablanca.
Casablanca was invaded at the time the picture came out, and so that was a great title, Casablanca. People knew about Casablanca.
You see, they had two things to cover: the conditions of the world regarding the war, and also what was happening. And so they didn't know, they had to watch it day by day.
I think that it was very timely. It was in some ways almost a little ahead of its time, because most people in America didn't think of all the people that were stranded in various parts of the world trying to get out. And of course that gave the picture a real feeling of tension, and this, suddenly people realized what we were in the middle of. At the same time, there was a great deal of humor in it, which the Epsteins were totally responsible for.
Philip and Julius Epstein were Hal Wallis's first choice for the difficult task of adapting Casablanca for the screen. Known for their ironic wit, the Epstein brothers turned Casablanca into a desert oasis, full of colorful characters.
I have to warn you, sir. I beseech you. This is a dangerous place full of vultures. Vultures everywhere. Thanks for everything. Goodbye, sir. It has been a pleasure to meet you. I'm sorry.
And clever conversation.
What in heaven's name brought you to Casablanca?
My health. I came to Casablanca for the waters.
The waters? What waters? We're in the desert.
I was misinformed.
That was my favorite line, because I think it summed up Bogart's character, the cynic, and there's a real piece of chutzpah, that line.
And the picture crackles with the Epstein style.
What is your nationality?
I'm a drunkard. You call the airport and let me hear you tell them. And remember, this gun is pointed right at your heart.
That is my least vulnerable spot.
How can you close me up? On what ground?
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
You're winning, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Everybody out at once.
The Epsteins' impact was mighty, but their stay was short, for they were called to Washington to work on Frank Capra's patriotic documentary series, Why We Fight.
The Epsteins had written the bulk of the film up to the beginning of the flashback. And they were in production, and consequently there wasn't enough material coming out. They still had to work on the second half. So Wallis got Howard Koch, who had just finished, I believe, The Letter, to come on and be another writer on the film. And it's Koch's contribution that makes Rick the sort of very mysterious, liberal sort of man that he is. A bitter man, but always on the side of the right side.
Louis, whatever gave you the impression that I might be interested in helping Laszlo escape?
Because, my dear Ricky, I suspect that under that cynical shell, you're at heart a sentimentalist.
There was a gentleman on the lot by the name of Casey Robinson, also under contract to Warner Brothers, who had done some of the big Bette Davis pictures, among many other things. And he was given the material to read, a kind of a synthesis of what the Epsteins were doing and what Howard Koch was doing. And he thought the comedy was great, he thought the melodrama was terrific, but he said, indeed, the romantic aspect, the love story, is weak. So they put him on the picture, and he gave his attention to the romantic scenes, to the flashback, adding more scenes with Rick and Ilsa.
The flashback sequence in Casablanca when they go to Paris, the entire thing is done almost entirely with music. And it's Steiner, of course, that wrote the music. He knew how to, he was a master at orchestration. He was a master at taking popular songs of the time and making them sound like they were written specifically for what he was doing.
Max Steiner was Hal Wallis's favorite composer. Indeed, he was everybody's favorite composer at Warner Brothers. His stunning score dominates the Paris flashback and sets the mood for one of the screen's greatest romances.
He was always on the cutting edge with all of his scores. And he had a great facility for working a tune into a picture. The way he worked in as time goes by, you hear fragments of it here and there, and it's really masterful what he did.
I don't
know what's right any longer. You have to think for both of us. For all of us.
All right. I will. Here's looking at you, kid.
I wish I didn't love you so much.
As time goes by, it was never, when it first came out in 1931, it was never a big hit. It did all right, but it wasn't a big hit. Of course, Casablanca gave it a renewed interest, and people, were suddenly aware of As Time Goes By. It still had a nostalgic quality about it, however, which was essential.
The picture was over, and they were saying that maybe Max would replace that song, As Time Goes By, with his own. But as it turned out, it was tied into the film so tightly that they would have had to have got Ingrid Bergman back. In the meantime, she had cut her hair, and so it just didn't work. And so finally, it ended up with As Time Goes By as the song.
Play it, Sam. Play As Time Goes By.
Played it for her, you play it for me.
Well, I don't think I can remember.
If she can stand it, I can. Play it.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by.
You can't hear this song as time goes by without having some kind of an instant recall. And I think that's what, to get all the elements together to create that powerful image, that's what a song takes, needs to become a standard.
As time goes by.
Paris, a place for living and loving. Suddenly, lives shattered and lovers torn apart. Everyone can identify with Rick and Ilse's ill-fated love affair. And it's hard to think of Casablanca without the unforgettable performances of Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, and Paul Henreid. But as the screenplay was being adapted, Warner Brothers announced the stars of the picture: Dennis Morgan, Ann Sheridan, and Ronald Reagan.
I've read stories and I've heard talk that Ronald Reagan was considered for lead, that George Raft turned it down. We didn't know any of that while we were working on it. All I can say is we were very, very lucky not to get Reagan, that Raft turned it down.
And Bogey set the standard for the sensitive yet hard-nosed hero.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
Wallace decided that Ingrid Bergman would be perfect for the role of Ilsa. There was only one catch.
Ingrid Bergman seemed to be the ideal choice, but David O. Selznick had Ingrid Bergman under contract. So the deal was, between Selznick and Hal Wallis, that Selznick would loan Ingrid Bergman for Casablanca, and Warner's would loan Olivia de Havilland to David O. Selznick.
Well, my brother and I were called into Hal Wallis's office, and he said, Selznick wants to hear the story before he'll give us Bergman. And we said, what story? We haven't worked it out yet. And he says, wing it. So we went to Selznick's office, and he was having lunch at his desk, and he was eating soup, and he never looked up at us. He said, go ahead. And we said, it's Casablanca, and the refugees are coming in, and they're in trouble, and they have to get out, and they have letters of transit, and some couriers have been murdered, and there's a man who sells the letters of transit, and there's a Bulgarian couple comes. I keep on talking, and I suddenly realized that I've talked about a half hour or 45 minutes of the story, and Bergman's character hasn't appeared yet, and he hasn't looked up at us yet. So I said, here comes the key word. I said, mad. It's going to be a lot of mad like Algiers. A lot of cigarette smoking, guitar. And he looked up and he nodded, and we knew we had Bergman.
Said Hal Wallis, she's the only actress with the luminous quality, the warmth and tenderness for the role.
I tried to stay away. I thought I would never see you again. That you are out of my life.
I can't possibly give you an objective opinion because it's impossible to see a movie with your mother in it and be objective. I have to be subjective. Of course, I think she looks ravishing in every scene.
There were a tremendous number of Bergman fans and Bogart fans. So, you know, people used to go to see stars in those days, not so much the picture. They would go for the star.
Bogart and Bergman, and the rest is cinematic history.
He's looking at you, kid.
Is that cannon fire? Or is it my heart pounding? Wherever they put you, and wherever I'll be, I want you to know that. Kiss me. Kiss me as if it were the last time.
The chemistry between Bogart and Bergman, I think, was apparent from the very beginning of shooting. There are times when actors and actresses just click, even though they have very little in common with each other.
I don't think there was a relationship with Humphrey Bogart off the set. I think that's acting. They were acting.
Ilsa, in love with one man and devoted to the cause of another. Resistance leader Victor Laszlo, portrayed by the dashing Paul Henreid.
I love you very much, Ilsa.
Your secret will be safe with me.
Paul Henreid was now doing Now Voyager, the Bette Davis picture at Warner Brothers, and they were looking at the dailies saying, this guy's terrific, he's marvelous, he'd be ideal for Laszlo. But he was under contract to RKO Radio Pictures. He'd been loaned out for Now Voyager. So what happened is they convinced Paul Henreid to take third billing, but co-starring billing.
The stars were supported by a superlative backdrop, a stellar roll call of Hollywood's finest actors. Who can forget Sidney Greenstreet as the unscrupulous Ferrari?
It would take a miracle to get you out of Casablanca, and the Germans have outlawed miracles.
Peter Lorre is the scheming Ugarte.
Rick, hide me. Do something. You must help me, Rick. Do something. Rick!
Conrad Veidt as the villainous Strasser.
My dear mademoiselle, perhaps you have already observed that in Casablanca, human life is cheap.
Dooley Wilson as Rick's trusted friend.
How much trouble? So much trouble. Well, now, don't you frown. Just knuckle down and knock on wood.
And the unflappable Claude Rains.
I've often speculated on why you don't return to America. Did you abscond with the church funds? Did you run off with the senator's wife? I like to think that you killed a man. It's the romantic in me.
This is a very exciting set because you had all types of actors, all types of uniforms. You had French sailors, French soldiers. You had America. It was a fantastic set to be working on.
Orchestrating the activity on the set was director Michael Curtiz. The king of Warner Brothers action pictures, Curtiz was the man behind such blockbusters as Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Welcome to Sherwood, my lady.
He came over from Europe because Warner's wanted somebody like Lubitsch, and he came in here with an accent, only his accent was so thick nobody knew what the hell he's talking about.
I liked Mike. I had great respect for him. And although I don't think he was one of the world's great directors to work with artists, he was technically as proficient a director as ever I've worked with.
Curtiz's use of shadow, camera movement, and his knack for rapid pacing all combined to give Casablanca the look that has become its trademark. Curtiz also proved himself to be adept at some classic Hollywood trickery.
That whole airport took place on a stage. We had a cutout plane, but the plane was in perspective. Mike said, I'd like to have some mechanics working around the plane so it isn't just sitting there. And that's when we came to the conclusion that if you had a normal size individual by the plane, it would look ridiculous. So we ended up finding some midgets to portray the mechanics so that the whole thing was in perspective.
When I walked in there and looked out there and looked out through the hangar doors out to the field that they had and saw an airplane and people walking around, and the airplane was a cutout and the people were midgets, I said, I've seen everything. I've seen everything. It was fantastic.
Michael Curtiz was a dynamic filmmaker, a commanding presence who also had a colorful way of speaking.
Now, I'd been told that this picture was to be done of all the dialogue live, nothing to be post-sync, put in later. It had to be done on the set, clean, and perfect. And we got through about 4 lines, and one of those big arcs started going, wah, wah, wah. And one came yelling and screaming at me. When he got mad, he had a bald head, and his veins stuck out in his head, and his eyes popped out, and he came right up to my face yelling, "God damn you, sir! God damn you, you idiot! You fool! You ruined my picture, my beautiful actress with the greatest scene in the picture, and you stopped the scene. You are dumb, 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 dumb!" And then I tried to say, "Well, Mike, you know, they told me," and he says, "Shut up! To hell with you! To hell with you!" And I thought, well, this is it. So I ran back at him, "To hell with you, to hell with you, to hell with you, and to hell with you, sir." And the set died. You could hear a pin drop.
Warner Brothers was firmly dedicated to the war effort, and Casablanca was no exception.
What if you murdered all of us? From every corner of Europe, hundreds, thousands would rise to take our places. Even Nazis can't kill that fast. Play La Marseillaise. Play it.
I cried when I wrote it. I literally cried when I wrote it. Tears, actual tears. I was writing and I cried. It was that powerful to me, and it was that powerful in the film.
Well, by now, the Epsteins had come back from Washington, and they're working on the script again, and they're trying to determine what to do about the ending.
It's still a story without an ending.
New pages were being delivered to the set daily, but still the ultimate outcome of the story remained unknown.
They couldn't figure out whether Ilsa stayed with her husband or went off with the Humphrey Bogart character, went off with Rick. They could never make up their minds during the making of the film who the main character should end up with.
She said, I said to the Epstein brothers, who do I go off with at the end, Henry or Bogart? And we said, as soon as we know, we'll let you know.
And in a moment of mutual inspiration, the means to the end finally came to them.
Phil, my brother and I were driving to the studio on Sunset Boulevard, and just below Beverly Glen, we turned to each other and said simultaneously, round up the usual suspects. If you're going to round up the usual suspects, what for? A murder.
Get away from that phone. I would advise you not to interfere. I was willing to shoot Captain Reno, and I'm willing to shoot you.
Who does the audience want to see murdered? Major Strasser.
Put that phone down. Get me the radio tower. Put it down.
Who do they want to see kill Major Strasser? Humphrey Bogart. And who do they want to see round out the whole thing? Claude Rains with the line, round up the usual suspects.
Major Strasser has been shot.
We were walking from the commissary one day, and we hear voices hailing us, and we turn, and there's Michael Curtiz, the director, and Hal Wallace running towards us, and their faces are white. He said, your ending does not work. And we said, what do you mean it doesn't work? He said, come on to the projection room and we'll show you. Bogart shoots Strasser, he falls to the floor. The gendarmes walk in, and Claude Rains says, Major Strasser has been shot, round up the usual suspects. We said, you can't do that. You've got to show a shot of Bogart waiting, a shot of Rains looking at him back and forth, and then he says,
round up the usual suspects.
And it worked. And then we knew we had an end, but we never could understand why such experienced people hadn't seen it. I think it's because they were so nervous about the picture.
Now that an end to the film had been discovered, the only way to resolve Casablanca's love affair became clear.
that plane leaves the ground and you're not with him, you'll regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of your life.
But what about us?
We'll always have Paris. We didn't have. We lost it until you came to Casablanca. We got it back last night.
When I said I would never leave you.
And you never will. But I've got a job to do, too. Where I'm going, you can't follow. What I've got to do, you can't be any part of. Ilsa, I'm no good at being noble, but it doesn't take much to see that the problems of three little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. Someday you'll understand that. Now. He's looking at you, kid.
You know, it's an ideal ending because you have something for everybody, really.
I think it's a film that sort of resonates within you, and as you get older, you appreciate more things in it.
True yesterday, true today, true tomorrow. That's my definition of a classic.
They become icons, and they've become symbols, and they've moved into the culture beyond the film. It's gone beyond just being a story.
Principal photography was completed. The fate of our characters decided. Yet Hal Wallace was still not satisfied.
It might be a good idea for you to disappear from Casablanca for a while.
A month later, Bogart was brought back to dub in the memorable last line, said to have been written by Wallace himself.
It doesn't make any difference about our bet. You still owe me 10,000 francs.
And that 10,000 francs should pay our expenses.
Our expenses? Mm-hmm. Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Audiences continued to respond to the romance and idealism of Casablanca. A testament to a bygone era, Rick's sacrifice of love for a greater cause continues to inspire us all. And as time goes by, everybody will keep coming back to Rick's.
Casablanca, city of hope and despair, located in French Morocco in North Africa. The meeting place of adventurers, fugitives, criminals, refugees lured into this danger-swept oasis by the hope of escape to the Americas. But they're all trapped, for there is no escape. Against this fascinating background is woven the story of an imperishable love and the enthralling saga of 6 desperate people, each in Casablanca to keep an appointment with destiny.
I was willing to shoot Captain Reno, and I'm willing to shoot you. All right, Major, you asked for it.
You knew how much I loved you. How much I still love you.
I know a good deal more about you than you suspect. I know, for instance, that you're in love with a woman. It's perhaps a strange circumstance that we both should love the same woman.
What do you want for Sam?
I don't buy and sell human beings.
That's too bad. That's Casablanca's leading commodity.
You can ask any price you want, but you must give me those letters.
That's no deal.
All right. I tried to reason with you. I tried. tried everything. Now I want those letters.